Hello everyone, I'm Mark Szuszkiewicz and welcome to a very special edition of Final Takes. Back in February, before I decided to become a New York State Assembly candidate, I was sitting down and interviewed by longtime friend and former City Council candidate Liam McCabe. We got into a lot of details about my life, and he filmed it on his phone for his YouTube channel, but I figured I'd put my little Final Takes touch on it, and I hope that you enjoy.
Number one, are you ready? Are you ready?
Tremendous show, tremendous success.
Hello everybody, Liam McCabe here. We are back on my YouTube channel with a second interview, which I hope to be a series of really interesting interviews. And we are starting off with a lot of the interesting people just sort of in my life and people I've met here in the neighborhood, in high school. So our next guest is Mark Szuszkiewicz. Did I get that right?
No, nobody does.
How do you pronounce it?
Mark Szuszkiewicz, but as the TV name,
That's what I said. Yeah?
As the TV name, I just abbreviate to Szuszkiewicz because it's easier to say. But you know, sometimes people still mess that up too. But it is the first time I'm being interviewed because I've interviewed numerous celebrities over the course of 7 years, and I had one quick person interview me at an event, but my first in-depth interview of me being interviewed. So I'm looking forward to being on the other side of the.
Yeah, I know you did a lot of interviews. Actually, you've had a pretty interesting life, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on my channel. But first, let's start from the beginning, where we know each other. We go back, obviously, Bay Ridge. Mm-hmm. But I think before I knew you lived in Bay Ridge, we met in high school, right? Bishop Ford. And we were both on the Bishop Ford track team. So you want to talk a little about Bishop Ford?
I mean, it was great. I mean, the track team, it's a great way to, what sold me on the track team was it's a great way to segue into other sports, you know, because you gain that stamina and all that to be a better basketball player or whatever the case may be. And I ended up just doing track for the first 2 years and then going to football and hockey. But I mean, it was, you know, I enjoyed it. You know, I wish I never left. Otherwise, I wouldn't have all this extra weight on me.
I know.
I would have stayed with those running several miles every day. You know, that's a great habit to have, and we need to pick that back up again.
Yeah, you and I both. I interviewed Tim Clark. That was my last interview. And he got into running later on in life, but became a triathlete and an Ironman. And it kills me because we were in prime shape, at least in high school, and certainly on the track team. But you're right that the track team really never cut anyone. Mm-hmm. You know, that was really one of the things that attracted to me, is that you could come in, you could compete at any level, and you can go on to do other things. It was great. It's like it accepted everybody from every sport. So when, you know, the basketball team or the hockey team was out of season, the track team had something for them, you know? Yeah. And it was a great way to train, to cross-train. So, and if you wanted to stay on track, you could stay on all 3 seasons. But it was a lot of fun being on the track team with you.
Definitely.
And of course, from Bay Ridge, you know, you're from the neighborhood, so.
Yep, we used to take the train back after practice, pretty much, since we both got off at the same stop on the R train on 77th Street. So.
Right.
Oh, Bay Ridge is great. I think, you know, and I've even seen in some magazine that I think it was ranked like the 3rd best neighborhood in all 5 boroughs at one point in time. And it's like the best kept secret. I mean, this was years ago too, but I mean, plenty of restaurants, plenty of things to do. You got the park over there by the water, which is a great place to run if you get back into it, or at least walk. Like you know, even in my adult days, I did a lot of walking over there in the park by the water, which is great. And you know, a lot of great things in the neighborhood. I love Bay Ridge.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about your career. Now, you have such an exciting and kind of long and diverse career, but when we kind of left off in college and started to go our own ways, you got originally involved in sales, sort of the financial world, money management, insurance. I think you were a stockbroker and some of that other stuff. So you want to tell us a little about that?
Yeah, right after, almost immediately after high school, I became a stockbroker at the age of 19. I did some retail sales, prior to that and after that, when I took a brief break from the financial services industry. Then I went back in 2005 as a financial advisor for MetLife. That's where I learned a lot more other than just individual stocks. You learn the whole aspect of mutual funds and annuities and life insurance and disability insurance and the full, broad spectrum and detail of all different things you do in financial planning. So
Right.
I worked for JP Morgan Chase after that, and was one of the top the top financial advisor in the district that I was in. It was during 2008, which was a rough time for the financial market, and a lot of people were doing bad at that point. I mean, as a financial advisor, you still make money either way, but it was sad seeing people who weren't clients of mine individually initially come in. Like I remember a client that was an employee for Bear Stearns, and she put like over $2 million in her employee stock option plan. And you figure Bear Stearns is one of the biggest companies in the world, but since they failed, it went from like $2.5 million to $50,000. And she came in just wanting something safe. I mean, she's out of retirement age, so imagine how devastating that is. And it was a tough time for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And someone who actually cares about people, it's hard seeing people devastated by that and losing their life savings.
Yeah, Bear Stearns. I remember the iconic, what was it, the $2 bill on the window when their stock dropped, down to $2 a share,
Yeah.
I guess at one point. A lot of people were hurt. A lot of people, obviously.
It happened so quickly in a matter of 2 days. I remember the branch manager of one of the locations was like, it dropped from 50-something to 20-something in a day. And he's asking me, oh, it's Bear Stearns, they're going to pick back up. I was like, I don't know, something just doesn't sound right about this. Like,
Right.
I wouldn't touch it. He didn't listen to me. He bought in anyway. And then the next day it was like $4 or $2, whatever the case may be, and JP Morgan Chase ended up being one of the buying them out. I think at $2.
It was a sad time, I think, in the country. So many, mom and pop shops and a lot of people that had their money invested in what they thought was a solid company probably ruined a lot of people's lives in Main Street too. Not only the people involved in the company or in the market, but just the average Joe.
Pretty much, it wasn't just the financial institutions. There was a lot of other, the market as a whole was devastated. You got to think about how many people in their 401k plans, how many people, took a devastating hit, close to retirement because they didn't adjust. The market was doing well for a while, and they didn't adjust to more conservative investments as they got, closer to retirement, which is what you're supposed to do.
Right. Now, here's an interesting, funny story. I don't know if you remember this, but way back, maybe before you became such a financial whiz, at one time you sold mattresses, didn't you?
That's prior to the stockbroker, you did say individual. I did say retail sales. I didn't get too specific to it, but
Right.
yeah, I was good at that too. So I mean, you try to be the best at whatever it was. I mean, I was 18 years old. I was making, over $100 a day.
I think I might have bought a mattress off of Mark.
I don't recall that, but it's possible.
Now, you talk about finance. Some people still stuff money in the mattress. That used to be an old, way to save money. That was their
or
financial.
underneath it or whatever.
Right.
I mean, they were right during 2008. That was the
Maybe that would
that was the
maybe they
safer-
should have gone to your mattresses. That would have been a safer bet for people's money than
Probably.
Bear Stearns. But that's true. I remember that when we were right out of high school. I might have bought a mattress from you. But the other thing you say is interesting is that you started out as a stockbroker. I know a lot of people start out. 20 years ago, we were getting out of high school. They were going into being a stockbroker or sort of specializing in one particular aspect or industry of the financial industry. And then, like you said, at one point, you then took on some of these other sales products, life insurance, some of those other things. And now you see the term financial advisor. So it's not, you don't go to one person, let's just say for your life insurance or to get mutual funds or to be invested in the market. You might go to someone like yourself that has years of experience in different industries and kind of brings it all into one house. And I think what we're going to see in the future some of what I've read too is now as people become much more individualized in terms of how they're working, whether they're working for Uber or doing some of this gig economy stuff, they're going to have to be responsible a little bit more for their own retirement. The idea of Social Security staying the way it is very scary.
Yeah, I mean, Social Security spending went up significantly again last year.
Right.
More and more people are retiring, and
less people have pensions. Less people have state and pensions. Certainly, private companies don't offer the pensions.
Well, not as many unions out there. Unions used to always have pension plans for their employees, and there's a lot of union busting and union shops that closed down over the years. So that's a big factor in it as well.
And workers are really being hurt by that. So the onus may be on them to find, like you said, financial advisors such as yourself, who can bring in all of those different investment strategies for retirement, especially, and to kind of protect their assets. And I think that's a big thing of what you were doing.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, aside from what I would sell and get a commission off of or advise, I always tell people that if you have a 401k, at least do the company match, whatever it is. Because, companies might match up to 2% of your earnings, up to 6% of your earnings. So if you're making $1,000 a week, then 2% is only $20, and if they're matching that with another $20 for that week, you automatically made 100% on your investment.
Right.
So I mean, they might match 50%. Every company is different, but at least do that especially if they're matching, because people are like, oh, money's so tight, and you could take, if you're employed most of the time, you could take loans out from your 401k. So some people who build up a 401k, they could go and take a loan out against it and pay off their credit card bills, which are at 20%, and their loan from their 401k is significantly lower. There's exclusions to take it out early without a penalty, aside from a loan, where first-time home buyers and plenty of other things. But aside from the things that I sell or advise, depending on each individual person's scenario, that's pretty much you're missing out on a big opportunity if you're not at least doing what your company matches.
Right. Very interesting. And basically take advantage of your 401k. All the different options is what the message
It's free
really is.
money if they're matching it, so you're getting 100% return on your investment pretty much, and almost instantly. It takes a while before you have to stay with the company a while before you're fully vested, and so on and so forth. But not to get into too many details on the program, because I know there's a lot more you want to get into, but it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, no, and I'll just say this. I know that I sort of woke up to investing probably in my 30s. I mean, I was maybe somewhat invested in my 20s, but really woke up to investing in my 30s, and I took advantage of the match. I had the thrift savings program with the federal government, but I obviously have a 401k. I take advantage of everything I can, but it's surprising how many people don't at your workplace. And if you talk to some of your friends, how many people aren't taking advantage of the 401ks? Like you said, they have at their job, at their business, that will do that match.
People
they really
just
should.
don't, they feel that money's so tight that they don't want to put it away, and it's a missed opportunity. And it comes out pre-tax, so that $20, depending on your tax bracket, is really only a difference of 15 or sometimes less, that you're, around $15 that you're actually not seeing in your paycheck. So.
Right. I will tell you this, every person that I do speak to that is in their 50s or 60s, let's just say, that looks back, says, I wish I did take a better advantage of some of these plans, and they're
glad they did.
Or they're glad they did, right. So let's talk a little bit about talk radio and interviewing. As we started off, you said you usually interview people. You've interviewed a lot of the candidates I know that I've worked for. Okay. I brought them onto your show, had them interviewed by you. Grimm. That's right. So talk about that. Talk about your how you were introduced into that.
Well, I started 7 years ago. One of my good friends, longtime friend that I've known for about 15 years now, Anthony Jones, he went and wanted me to do his internet talk radio show. And, with the crew that was there, we had a good chemistry. And I said, let's take this to the next level. And we were on AM radio in Westchester. I came up with the name Real Fans, Real Talk. And I put the website together, and, we were on AM radio, and then on BronxNet television in the Bronx, and then on Brick Arts Media, or Be Free now. It used to be BCAT back then, and so a different couple of different outlets for that. And it started out with us just talking sports and getting a couple of guests who are doing interesting things in sports, local sports people, and then the names just started getting bigger and bigger as the time progressed. I remember still one of my favorites to this day, I think it was within the first 2 years of starting, I interviewed New York Knicks power forward Anthony Mason. And that was just being in it. It was at his home.
Yeah,
so
right.
The fact that I was in his house and he let us in and we did an interview, and it's just growing up as a Knicks fan and seeing him play, and then
that was really cool.
I mean, he was one of my favorite Knicks players, and I said to him, you're my second favorite Knicks player of all time. This is off camera. The off camera stuff.
Too bad you didn't get that on camera.
The off camera stuff was even better than that. He's like, second favorite. What kind of blank is that? So a lot of the off camera stuff was great, but the on camera interview was great. And I interviewed heavyweight champion of the world Deontay Wilder a few years back in Alabama, as well as Butterbean in Alabama, and long list of different, especially in the boxing world, heavyweight champions, Larry Holmes, and former champions, current champions. The list goes on. Pretty large in the boxing world, and we had a Super Bowl champion, Walter Thurman, who won a Super Bowl on that Seahawks team a few years back, and a lot of big names. And in the political world, interviewing the mayor candidate Joe Lhota, who won the Republican primary and lost to the clown that we have in office now, de Blasio.
We used to have I still have the stickers. Don't blame me. I voted for Joe Lhota, right?
Yeah. And I thought he was going to do a great job in office if he were to be elected. He just didn't have, I guess, the personality. And, I mean, I remember back then, I would think if I had to have a drink with somebody, I'd probably want to have it with de Blasio as opposed to Joe Lhota back
Speak
then.
For yourself.
Not knowing either one of them. You know what I'm saying? Not knowing either one of them at all.
Right.
Just off of their personality.
Right.
But Joe Lhota was one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life, and he would have done a great job as mayor.
Right.
Had a lot of great ideas, and this mayor is just destroying the city, and he unfortunately even got reelected somehow.
I got to know Joe. I actually think Joe is a very interesting guy to talk to. But I think what the point I get is, Joe had never run for elected office prior to that, right?
Yeah.
And where you had the mayor, who was the public advocate, was a city councilman, had been very active in campaigns, and sort of knew how to be a candidate, how to be an elected official. Whereas Joe was actually doing the work, right, behind the scenes, managing the MTA and helping run the
deputy
government.
mayor for Giuliani.
Right. When this city was put back together after the disaster that we lived through in the 1970s and certainly 80s, and it's bizarre because I remember that during that campaign he had these ads that people said, "Oh, you're fear mongering," and it said, "We're going to return back to the 70s and 80s if the policies that de Blasio is suggesting, we put into place. This is the world we're going to live in." And he was absolutely right. He was prophetic, and it's sad.
It's not completely there yet,
Right.
but he's making steps towards that, especially recently with the bail reform of just allowing criminals to be released, and it's offering the Mets tickets to come back. You can't give Mets tickets to somebody for free anyway. The Mets suck.
Hey. You're on my YouTube channel, all right? Respect the Mets. On Liam's YouTube channel.
That's what happens when you have a Red Sox fan become mayor.
That's true. That is true. He is a Red Sox fan. And so was Bloomberg. Bloomberg was from Boston. It's like we can't get any real, Brooklyn people elected.
Or at least native New Yorkers.
Or native New Yorkers. Well, Giuliani was. And Giuliani
Joe
really
Lhota
was
born in the Bronx.
right. and great public servants, and really knew what was going on in the city. And I think what's happened now, as you said, is with bail reform, is you have sort of this progressive push. And I think they really operate in the world of theory. And I don't think that they, one thing about being a New Yorker is we talk about, riding the train, riding the R train, getting on to the F train, being kind of street kids, early on, riding the subways, growing up on the streets of Brooklyn. You kind of get a certain level of street smarts, and you sort of see the world more the way it is, especially with all the different diverse people and all the different interests, involved in the world, really right, at play here in the streets of New York. And I think everyone that grows up in other areas, especially in other parts of the country, don't really get that. And I think a lot of the people pushing sort of this agenda are people that haven't lived in New York. So I think they arrive, I think they're educated someplace else. They come to the city and they've come with bad ideas, I think. And unfortunately, we're living out those bad ideas. And you and I were just at a press conference with Nicole Malliotakis, who was, obviously she's running for Congress. She's the assemblywoman in this area. And she was saying the exact thing that you were talking about. But
she didn't bash the Mets, though. So.
She didn't bash. No, that's right. That's right. But she is running for Congress. You mentioned Congressman Grimm interviewing him, and that segues into the other part of the world. Is we are involved a little bit in politics, and I know that you have thought maybe about running. I know some people have suggested maybe you take a stand at running for office one day, maybe in Bay Ridge, someplace else. I don't know if you've given that some thought. But you certainly are a dynamic guy. You're kind of this Renaissance man, and I have a list of things to talk about. We haven't even gotten to the other stuff that you're involved in, but we've talked about finance, you've talked about being on TV, and some of the other stuff. So, talk to us about politics.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that I'd like to see changed, and I think one of the things that bothers me the most is a lot of people who do get elected are going to run for election for the wrong reasons. Mm-hmm. They're not looking to they don't really care as much. They want to advance their career. They want to, make money in the process. And a lot of the legislation, and Nicole actually mentioned it today with the bail reform bill, which was rushed, that a lot of these legislators, they don't actually read what's in front of them. Mm-hmm. They just what is everyone else, what is the rest of the party doing and why. Right. They get like the Cliff's Notes of it, which oftentimes isn't actually the truth. As she mentioned that they pitched it as with the bail reform bill that it's first-time offenders only and low crimes, but when she went into detail, that's not actually the case. It's not just minor crimes, and there, she does believe, and I do believe, and I've thought about it for a while, bail reform, because there are a lot of innocent people that are stuck that go to Rikers Island and don't have the opportunity for a trial because how are they supposed to prepare for trial to defend themselves when they're locked up? Mm-hmm. They get their public defenders, and these are minor crimes, and it's unfair to them. So there was a need for bail reform, mm-hmm. but it didn't need to be on the drastic level where violent criminals are released automatically and go out and commit crimes again. The mm-hmm. judges are supposed to make that decision as to what previous record, what's the severity of the crime, what type of evidence is there, is it, right. Is it a clean-cut case where 10 people saw this person do it and he's clearly guilty and, he has the possibility of doing it again, then you don't just, set the guy free and tell him to come to court to get watch a crappy team play baseball.
There you go again. That's it.
I gotta have the
I'm
comic
gonna get arrested,
relief. I gotta have the comic relief there. I mean, we're talking about serious issues here, so maybe I shouldn't. But at the same time, it is sad. So sometimes,
Well, it's tough. I will say, look, it's tough being a Mets fan at times. I will admit that. But you know what? That speaks to sort of how true believers we are. My father used to say, you're kind of born with being a Mets fan, kind of as an affliction sometimes. You know what I mean?
I'm a Knicks fan, so I'm suffering as well.
You're born with other things, but
the Knicks actually won in '86, so they won in your lifetime. I'm sorry, the Mets won in '86, so they won in your lifetime. The Knicks haven't won since '73, so I wasn't even born then. So
right. That was a wild World Series though in '86, and I remember I was at Our Lady of Angels. I was a kid in school, and I remember staying up late with my grandfather and watching those games, Game 6 and 7. It was just wild, and it was wild to see the city. And that was when the Mets were sort of the real second-class team of New York City. And you say what you want, but I definitely think the Mets' popularity have grown in New York City, and I think they're just more of a mainstream team now. And that's sort of nice. And what do you think of Citi Field?
I'm not sure. I think I went there once for a concert. I don't really recall exactly, but it seemed nice.
Okay. All right. Now, the other thing, speaking of sports, I wanted to segue into your involvement in Golden Gloves. It's another aspect of your life. Maybe you could talk to us about that.
Well, when I was younger and I saw that the Golden Gloves came to Bishop Ford, some of the earlier fights and stuff like that, and I had an interest towards boxing, and I never really picked it up. Obviously, I was busy with
also
a lot
Our
of
Lady
things.
of Angels.
Yeah.
And there was a big part of some of the Catholic schools here. Our Lady of Angels is big, and Bishop Ford as well, a big part of it.
And nowadays, the finals are in the Barclays Center, so the idea of fighting on stage in the Barclays Center was a big thing. And interviewing all these, not only Golden Gloves champions, but actual world champions and so many people in the boxing world, it's like, I just really got inspired. And I was trained by a former welterweight champion of the world, Aaron Superman Davis, who trained me and saw a lot of potential, said that I had the potential to go pro if I stuck with it. I had a lot of punching power, and I had a lot of heart. I fought tired. I was aggressive, and unfortunately, I faced the guy who ended up winning the whole thing. I think that I could have beaten over half the people in the tournament, and even if I didn't go all the way the first year, I didn't want to lose my first fight. I ended up interviewing him on the show afterwards, and in his final fight at the Barclays Center, I did go to it. I had free tickets through a connection over there, and I watched him fight, and he was fighting somebody who was jacked up and everything, and everyone thought that the big, strong guy was gonna wipe the floor with him, but I was like, no, watch this kid. He's good. He's gonna go. It's gonna be the other way around. And he put him on his butt a few times. He never knocked me down,
right?
But he put the other guy on his butt a few times, and
right.
So it is what it is. I still kind of get the urge to go, because I did a few rounds on the bag this morning and the day before that, and I still do it for exercise, but I still get the urge because I think 40 is the max cutoff, and 35 was the max cutoff the year that I fought, and it was kind of a now or never thing. Like, if I'm going to do this, I got to do it now, and so I did that, and people have their concerns, especially parents, when it comes to football and boxing. And I've interviewed, I haven't released the video yet, but a former champion and world champion and 5-time Golden Gloves champion, Mark Breland from Brooklyn. I discussed with him about, what message would you give to parents who, about their kids, and there was kind of a general agreement that, a lot of what boxing does for some of these kids is it keeps them off the streets, and and football too. Like, you're worrying about the head injuries and things like that. That's a major concern, more now so than ever, that the information's being released. But it keeps a lot of these guys who they don't drink, they don't smoke weed, they don't do any type of drugs or anything. They're just focused on boxing and staying in shape. Would that be the case if they didn't fall in love with boxing? Right. Would they have gotten fat like us? We quit track and maybe took up drinking and partying and maybe doing drugs, or you don't know where their life would be if they didn't find boxing, or if they didn't fall in love with football. So there's a risk-reward scenario with that, because you do a lot of brain damage to your brain from drugs and alcohol too.
Right.
So
there's a great tradition, I think, in Brooklyn. Certainly, some of the boxers, amateur boxers, and professional boxers I've come into contact with, you speak of Michael Grimm. We used to have his district office used to be right next to a jewelry, and the jeweler's son, Boyd Melson, was an amateur boxer. He was a West Point graduate, and he tells a story of, I think, coming back from addiction and being out on the streets. And, he went all the way to West Point, graduated, had a phenomenal boxing record, and an interesting story, too. He used to take his winning purse and donate it to a very special charity. And I thought that was great. And it's, again, a story of a kid who, from the streets, might not have been doing the right thing at certain points, but found boxing. Right down the block from where we are was Saddam Ali. And we're going back maybe about 10 years ago when I first met Saddam Ali. He no longer has the boxing ring, but right on 5th Avenue and 69th Street.
Yeah, I remember I met him there once before.
Saddam, and he was an Olympic boxer, so he got into boxing at an early age as a kid, and was eventually able to fight for the United States as an Olympic boxer. And as he was an amateur and getting into his professional status, he had a ring and right here in Bay Ridge. And I remember that Congressman Grimm and myself would go there and train with him. And one of the great things that I would see is, as you said, day in and day out, the kids were attracted. And a lot of kids, I grew up hanging out on 69th Street. That was sort of my hangout. And the kind of kids that I grew up, kids just like me, kids that grew up on the streets, would come in because they were interested. And he had a very open door policy. He was very nice. And he would give kids that couldn't afford gloves or tape or shorts or shoes, he'd sort of give it away free. And he didn't make a lot of money, but he brought a lot of kids in off the street, and they trained there. And some of them really took off and took boxing into another level. And Saddam now is boxing, I think, for Golden Boy. He no longer has that gym there, but that was a godsend for the community. And sometimes people forget about that. I never have, and I know that you've probably come to some of those matches as well.
Yeah. And you don't even have to take up boxing with the intent of fighting. Like, you think about the stress relief that it gets just hitting the bag. Sometimes you're frustrated and people want to punch a wall or something. But, just imagine punching a bag for a few rounds and just getting that great cardio in, the good health. And, when I was playing football or planning to compete, I always ended up getting in great shape, eating healthy, because that was a motivational factor. I have this fight coming up in 3 months. I got to get it together and lose weight quickly and, whatever. So it's, it's not for everybody, but it's I wouldn't necessarily discourage it completely, because it's, there's a lot of pros to it as well. So
now it's great. Talking about being fat. I put on a lot of weight, but behind us, you see, me and my wife were just married in October, Christine.
I was there. Congratulations.
That's right.
Again.
That's right. You were there. It was a lot of fun, as you know. And we both lost a bit of weight. I sadly put a lot of it back on.
Yeah, did I.
Yeah.
I lost 60 pounds.
Probably put it on at the wedding because the food was so delicious.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you, Liberty
I put
Warehouse.
back on about 25 pounds since the wedding, but that's not as a result
You and I
of the
both.
wedding.
We put on a person between us.
Yeah.
But I did kickboxing. I did CKO kickboxing. And, whether it's kickboxing or just hitting the bag at the gym, it certainly is one of the best workouts. Full body workout, cardio, strength. You work out all kinds of muscles. You build up your endurance. And, the pounds just sort of shed throughout the day,
Yeah.
You lose.
And you just feel so much better and more mentally focused throughout the day when you get any type of exercise, whether it's boxing or running or whatever the case may be. So it's always great to start out a day, in my case, hitting the bag or lifting weights or whatever.
Yeah. And, just to go back to that, I wish we had a community pushing boxing, getting, kids in the ring, getting them to get out their frustrations. People think, the boxing is violent because it's fighting, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Like you said, this is what gets kids off the streets. This is what gets them healthy, gets them focused, gets them into a position where they're 100% healthy. They do better in school, and they get a lot of that aggression now.
Yeah.
Part of it is being a teenager is some of this aggression. There was a kid, 6-year-old, stabbed just yesterday on 4th Avenue, a block away from where the gym would have been. So you're kind of seeing a correlation, in my opinion, where kids are not hitting the gym, hitting the bag. They're on social media. They're on video games. They still have a lot of this anxiety, a lot of this pent up aggression. And I think boxing was a great way to
giving them medication that they don't necessarily need
Right.
when they could just be out playing or exercising, whatever
Right.
it is. And a lot of the people who are trained fighters, most of them I would think aren't the ones that are out there looking to start a fight. They're generally, they're getting all their aggression out in the ring or on the bag or whatever the case may be, and they're not looking to beat somebody up.
Right. Now let's move on to our next topic, and that is acting. You've also been involved in acting. You really are a Renaissance man.
Jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades. But you've interviewed some great people. You've done a lot of great things. You've worked in the world of finance, like I said, in politics, but also
too, but we don't
dabbled
need
in
to get into
acting.
that,
And you've been in some commercials, or you've been in some Amazon Prime stuff. And so, talk to us a little about that.
Well, I mean, being in the TV world and entertainment world, I mean, I can probably, I'm not an A-list celebrity. I don't know where I am between A and Z, but I think it's closer
You know
to
what?
Z.
On the Liam McCabe channel, you're an A-list celebrity.
That's it.
That's it.
I'm moving on up.
That's
My
it.
career's about to take off thanks to Liam.
That's it. You're a big star.
But you meet a lot of different people who are doing different projects, and you get involved with them. And I've done. I think my first acting was with Pressed, a battle rap movie, which we filmed. I played Sal, who was a racist record executive in there. I had a few scenes in there. We're actually filming the sequel within the next month, and I'm interested to see what happens to the character Sal. I might have to shave the beard again, because in that role he was clean cut, and he was heavier than I was before.
Right.
So maybe I put on some pounds
it.
for the sake of the role,
That's it.
so I could look more like I did
it.
4 years
Anything
ago.
for the
when I
art,
filmed.
right?
There you
if
go.
If it calls for chicken parm heroes, it calls for chicken parm heroes.
Chicken parm, you taste so good.
You kind of got that biker thing going. Sons of Anarchy look now.
Well, I originally grew the beard actually because I was always clean shaven and fade, short hair and everything. But I got casted for a role as a Viking, which still is yet to be produced, and who knows what happens with that. But that was almost 2 years ago, and I don't know what's going to happen with that. But whether or not it's going to be filmed, because that happens. People get scripts, and productions never actually get made. But so that's what made me decide to grow the beard initially, and then it kind of grew on me, pun intended.
Yeah, but
So, and then my first on Amazon Prime was with Everyday the Brand, who was actually the owner of the first internet radio station that my friend Anthony called me on to be a part of his show, which was called New York Philly Sports Talk back then. And he was working on a project. He's done plays before, and he's done numerous films before that. And he did this show called Vish Merrick, which was an urban drama. I play like a kind of a corrupt politician, and it was a good role, and it was on Amazon Prime for a while. It's not on Amazon Prime now, but the new project, which was just released a few weeks ago on Amazon Prime, is called The Needs, where I play Mr. Griffin, who's a parent of a special needs daughter. And, it's kind of a parent-teacher conference type of situation, but specifically for parents of special needs kids. And the teachers are talking about different issues that they're having, and the parents are talking about different issues that they're having. It's a short film, about 40 minutes long, and it's available on Amazon Prime now. If you don't have Prime, it's about $2 to rent, and it's called The Needs. You could look it up on Amazon Prime. It's available now. So.
Cool. All right, little plug there out there for everybody.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a very important topic, and it was great to be a part of it. I think it was done very well.
Yeah. Now you talk about Amazon. I certainly have become much more of a user of Amazon. It's sort of this new economy where everything gets sent to us, everything's on an app. And speaking of that kind of app economy, one of the other ways that we're connected is through Uber, and we'll just talk a little about that. You know, right now I work for the Taxi and Limousine Commission with their enforcement unit, so they regulate the taxi industry. But I have a history prior to that working for that agency. I was licensed by the TLC to drive, get a hack license and drive a cab. And that happened really because of my relationship with you. And you, like many of the other people I knew, there was a gentleman that owned the Irish import store in the neighborhood, also named Liam. He had an Uber license, so a lot of other people, some firefighters that I know, sort of did this on the side. And that's sort of the same way you came to driving for Uber, sort of on the side. You got a hack license, and it began to be a way you could make extra money. And eventually, when I ran for city council, I was working for Congressman Donovan, and I was looking for a job where I could balance campaigning full-time in many cases, or weird hours, and find something flexible. And that's how I came across this sort of gig economy and becoming an Uber driver. I had to go get a hack license, and I drove all around the city, and you did as well. And in the beginning, I would rent your car, and you helped me out. You helped get my start. And I think you might have made a little money by
not much, believe it or not,
by recruiting me into Uber.
I
blame you. You know.
But the renting part, I didn't make too much off of that. I gave you the family
you
pricing.
You actually gave me a very good rate, and I just want to say thank you. That helped get me started at the time. Probably didn't have too much money to either rent a car, which you have to do, or buy your own car. And in the very beginning, it's a bit of an investment. You helped me get off the ground, so thank you.
Yeah. I mean, when I started to get the taxi plates and the insurance on my existing vehicle was about $2,500 up front. I originally started just doing it in Jersey with my car before I put the taxi plates on when Uber first started, and not everybody heard about it. This was 7 years ago when I started. Yeah. And I just wanted to see whether or not I'd be okay with, having people in the car and, all that, whatever. I always thought that it was something I'd be okay with because I really enjoy driving. I just like being on the road. I always did. So I did that, and then I took it to the next step, got the hack license, put the taxi plates on the car, and then started making money with it, and they had promotion in the month of December, that I happened to sign up in 2014, and made good money in the beginning. A lot's changed since then.
A lot has changed, yes.
And I'll get into that in a second. And then I got a second car with taxi plates, and I would rent one and drive one, or sometimes I'd rent both of them out, trying to grow that business. But the fact that a lot of things changed in the industry and several other factors, I don't have either one of those anymore, and I can't get one because the law is changing. So I sold one of my vehicles back then, and a lot of things happened. So I do it part-time still every now and then. There's different ways where you can rent for the day or, for the week or whatever the case may be. And it's a great way when you're doing a lot of other things to get additional income. I remember I was working as a financial advisor in Penn Plaza, and I would work in the morning and I'd meet people, and, as an Uber driver and a financial advisor, like if you're talking to people, they automatically have this negative stigma of you. They look down on you kind of because you're a driver, but they have no idea all the things that I've accomplished in my life. And, I used to have a lot of interesting conversations with it. Now people are just, more, I'm quiet, they're quiet.
Yeah, no, it's true. It teaches you a lot of humility. For example, I was running for the city council and driving a cab.
Yeah, it takes some pride swallowing a little bit, but the fact that I just really enjoyed driving, and it was, decent money. I'd average about $25 an hour. It would pay for my car and my parking in One Penn Plaza when I would go upstairs and with my suit and, sell insurance or whatever, Right.
But it really was a great way to meet people all across the city. You really got a real cross-section of the diversity of New York, and all the different interesting people, people on the lower end of the economic spectrum, very wealthy people, like you said, financial stockbrokers, and, people traveling to the far edges of the city, living in poverty, all in many cases could hop into your cab. So you really got a real sense of the diversity of New York. I thought it was really interesting. And like you said, when I was driving, if people did strike up a conversation, they might find interesting things about me, and
and vice versa. I feel that there's a lot less conversing than when I started.
I agree.
I used to have a lot of in-depth conversations, met a lot of different people. Met one person from one of the band. I can't think of the name of the band, but it's pretty popular songs that they had on the radio. And one of the players for the Giants, he was injured his rookie year. Can't think of his name either. He was a safety on the Giants, but yeah, I mean, you meet some interesting people.
You meet everybody, and it teaches you humility too, because people would be surprised who they're jumping in the cab with, and you never know who your cab driver is. Someone might have come from a different country and may have been a doctor or had some other profession, and they're trying in cases to get licensed, to get those licenses transferred, or to get whatever missing links in their education, get them qualified to be a doctor or an attorney or whatever other professional career, an engineer in the United States. Brilliant people just have to be driving a cab.
And we already plugged Uber, but they actually pay for college now for their drivers. If they're a gold member because they have an Uber Pro program, and if they've done a lifetime of 3,000 trips, then they could do. They pay for Arizona State University online. So,
right.
It would. Which is good for people. You could do part-time, and for people who want to get a degree and do something else besides Uber down the road. That's something. Right.
Now, we also drove for Lyft at the time, and really basically what it was downloading the app. So you could
download everything, and if one beeps, and pretty much most of the people do that, and that way you stay busier longer. There's less wait time in between trips, so that's one of the things that a lot of the drivers did. But and a lot's changed since then because of Mayor de Blasio. I mentioned I wouldn't be able to put taxi plates on a vehicle now, so the only option to do it now for somebody new coming in the industry is renting a vehicle because they can't buy their own, which is really not fair because they're paying rental prices significantly higher than if they made the investment for their own personal vehicle and put the taxi plates on it like I did back then, and they're forced to pay these big rental companies, who profit off of it. So that really only helps the big guys out there.
Big guys, yeah.
And it also, unless it's a wheelchair accessible vehicle, and then last summer they passed where the electric vehicles are available now, but there's not that many charging stations in New York for electric vehicles. But even more recently, changing the amount of times that you could go online. So it used to be slow, but you would at least be able to go online and wait for a trip.
Right.
Now, if it's slow, they'll just log you off and you can't even work.
Right.
So especially for those people that did invest the money to buy a car a few years ago, it's harder for them to make money now. And the thing that doesn't make sense about it is the whole premise for de Blasio doing this is to try to cut down traffic. But the times that people can go online are the busiest times when there's the most traffic anyway. The time when there's no traffic is the times that people can't go online anyway. So, I mean, it's the rush hour traffic. You could work in both morning and evening, without having much of a problem. And it's the middle of the time when there's not much traffic on the street. So he really didn't accomplish anything but hurting the pockets of a lot of drivers out there trying to make a living.
I don't often say agree with the mayor, but I do share the concern that we have to deal with congestion, and you have to deal with it some way. And I think what has happened is it's sort of a give and take. And I agree, it's a lot harder than when we were doing it. Like I work on the other side of it now. But when I was doing it, I think it was a little bit easier, and there was a little bit more flexibility. But unfortunately, there weren't as many benefits for the drivers. So it's sort of like a give and take. A lot of the drivers, and I was one of the founding members of the IDG, which is the Independent Drivers Guild, and we were in organizing to, try and get certain benefits for the drivers. And in some cases, it was better hours or some flexibility. Even using the bathroom was very difficult. It still is. And you could I mean, I remember you couldn't get to the bathroom. If you had to go to JFK, it was hard to get to a bathroom.
And
Anywhere in the city.
That's just driving when you have been holding in for a while. There's nothing more stressful in the world that I can think of. And you're on the road and you're stressed out, because you're holding it in for several hours. And, there used to be McDonald's over on 34th Street that had parking. That's torn down now. And there's certain places where there's no place to park for drivers in Manhattan to use the bathroom. So, but one of the things that they did accomplish, the IDG, is the adding tipping to the Uber platform, because they never added. They had the whole premise that tips aren't, are included, but they really weren't, and making it seem like these drivers are making a killing when they're really not. It's a decent living, don't get me wrong, but tipping. And it kind of made people accustomed to not tipping their drivers anymore and stuff. So that was one of the negative things that Uber did, and one of the positive things that the IDG did, bringing it back. And
just it's something as silly as using the bathroom, but it's so important. You've been out there. When you're out there for 8 hours and you don't shut the app off, and you drive from JFK all the way to the Bronx, and before you drop someone off, you get another call, and you take the call. You don't know where you are. You don't know the area to find a parking spot or find a restaurant or find some place to go. And then you take that call, and that call from the Bronx into New Jersey. Now you've got to get out of Jersey. So you could be driving back and forth before you find a place to really pull over and use the bathroom. And as you know, parking, like you said, is very hard in New York City, so you don't want to risk. And then you get a ticket. Yeah, double parking. Using the ticket. I find the police officers are really somewhat flexible with double parked taxi cars and not giving tickets. I've never had, fortunately, haven't had the incident where I double parked and ran into a place for a few minutes and came back and never got a ticket. And knock on wood. But as a driver, like you said, having whether it's the police enforcement, TLC enforcement, the drivers, all of us have to kind of live together in this city. And I think you, as being both a driver as I was, as you were, and being someone who uses Uber, you get to see it from different perspectives. And I think one of the things we have to try and do is really find a balance, right? Find a balance where everybody can kind of get along and, bring all those voices together for transportation. It's such a complex network, Sort of Uber has really changed the whole cab industry, and medallions have really lost their value. A lot of people that lost their savings, and that's very tragic. But I think what's happening is the whole industry is being revolutionized, and transportation in general has to go through some big changes. And I think we got a lot of.
I've had a lot of ideas on how to fix that, and I'll get into that if I eventually run for office, because I do have. I don't want to get into too many details, because I have my notes that and I don't want to say things without getting into forgetting one detail or whatever, because it's a little bit. It's not something that I could get into within a matter of a minute, or so. But there's some ideas for that.
We have a special guest here. Sorry about that, everybody at home, but someone wants to be interviewed.
Now he's in the shot for sure.
So we have a special guest here. This is Kalai, one of my dogs, one of our family's dogs. She's the newest addition, and she'd like to be interviewed too. She has a lot to say, and she's very good friends with Mark. Mark is definitely one of her favorites. Yeah. So she came by to say hello, say she approves. Give a kiss. Okay, go back down. So, let's move into one last part. Talk about speaking of driving and Uber. You also did another just very interesting thing. Really, it's crazy how many different things you do or involved in, and I think it really speaks to kind of the curiosity of a person you are. You talk about how you got into Uber years before a lot of people even gave it a shot, just because you were curious. What's this thing? And you investigated.
I knew it was going to take off, so that's why I wanted to get in early, and that's why I wanted to build a fleet of cars. And I got to the second car, and it never expanded further than that, unfortunately, because of various reasons. But yeah.
But it's amazing how many different things you've dabbled in, how many things you've tried, how many things you've become good at, and it's fascinating. And I really, like I said, I think it just kind of speaks to your ability to try new things and see where the world takes you. Speaking of which, you now drive trucks. You've taken that on as a new endeavor. Tell us about that. Now, you told me the other day, you drove cross country.
Yeah.
Regular Teamster driving guy, across the country in a big 18-wheeler. So.
Unfortunately, I was a Teamster in my retail days, but not for, a lot of truck companies aren't union, unfortunately, nowadays. But I did get my CDL. I went to Colorado to Careers Worldwide. It's a 3-week course out there in Colorado, and I got my CDL, commercial driver's license, Class A, 18-wheeler. I'm learning how to back it up and maneuver it, all different types of maneuvers that you have to do with it. And, it's a long process, but there's a national truck driver shortage out there because the baby boomers are retiring, and a lot of the youth, they look down at professions like drivers, that they're, whatever they, perceive it as, and they have their degrees, and it's a pretty good paying job, and like I said, I like driving, and I like the open road more than I do like the city. But the fact that I live here, I like the city, but the open road, going out there, seeing the mountains, seeing the desert, seeing all that all over the country was something I always wanted to do. Just maybe get an RV or something when I'm older. And a lot of people think that drive across the country in an RV.
Right.
Now, there's no bathroom in the trucks, but there's a fridge, there's a microwave, there's the bed, so it's like the next best thing. And probably even better because of the fact that I could actually get paid to do it, So I got paid to travel across the country, basically.
Right.
And it's something that I might dabble with again down the road, because I like the idea of being able to get paid to drive over to a city that I want to go to, and then spend a couple of days there, as opposed to paying for a flight. I'm getting paid to travel over to that destination.
Right.
That's something that I'll probably end up doing down the road, but we'll see. But only a few months experience with that, only about 3 months. I went through a long, grueling training process, and, you're kind of, I've either lived with my parents and siblings when I was younger to my own apartment. And for the large portion of my adult life, I've lived by myself. And then you go to school and you have all these roommates in an apartment, and then you're living in a small truck with your trainer for several weeks. And, so it's a different experience. So there's a lot of pros to it, but the process to get there was tough, and I'm glad I did it. I really enjoyed, like I said, the scenery. I saw the Golden Gate Bridge and all these different things around the country, all within a matter of days. I've been to 40 states now. So a lot of the states I've been to before doing the truck driving, but now my state total count is about 40, and hope to be in all 50 states at one point. So
yeah, that's fascinating. It's we in the span of this conversation, we've talked about all the different things and many more. We just don't have all the time to talk about everything. But from being a stockbroker, being a financial advisor for a Fortune 500 company, making
at one point when I was working at a top financial institution in the world, but
okay.
I hate them. I hate them, but
right. But hey, you did it. You did it.
They're an
you
evil
made a lot of
company,
money, and you drove fancy cars. You've lived all different aspects of life, and I think that you've done things that people say they're going to do. You've actually gone out and did it. And people say, "Hey, I want to jump in the ring, put on a pair of boxing gloves, and go compete." At Madison Square Garden or at the Barclays Center. You've gone and done that. Like you said, you've worked for these Fortune 500 financial companies. I've seen you with fancy cars, made a lot of money. So how many people say, "Hey, I'd love to drive a truck and go cross country"? Yeah. Some people it's just an idea or something they like to do. You go out and you do these things, and I think that's so fascinating. Every time I talk to you, you have a different idea, something you may want to do, and I think that's the fully, a full life. As I said before, you are a Renaissance man, and to live that kind of life, where you really do, you march to the beat of your own drum, and I think that's really cool, Mark.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what I'd like to ask you is, are there any books that you would recommend to anyone? Any books you've enjoyed reading lately?
Nothing I can think of off the top of my head. I got the prequel to the Game of Thrones book as a Christmas gift. I haven't.
Hello everyone, Mark Szuszkiewicz here. Unfortunately, some of the footage from Liam's phone was not captured and we lost some of the interview. Liam was discussing with me some generic questions about books that I was reading. I mentioned the Fire and Blood, which is the Game of Thrones prequel, which I received as a Christmas gift. And also, after the interview, I recently acquired the MAGA Doctrine, which is by Charlie Kirk. And Charlie Kirk is doing a lot of great things for Turning Point USA, because a lot of our youth is being indoctrinated in schools to hate our country with liberal ideology. So he's out there educating our youth. And so go pick up a copy of the MAGA Doctrine and support Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA. Now, aside from that, he asked me some other generic questions, what TV shows I was watching, etc. And then we led to term limits, which I believe we were talking about Bloomberg having 12 years instead of 8 as New York City mayor, and then the interview continues from there. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the interview.
Set that precedent. That wasn't law until after FDR, that you can only serve 2 terms. That was a precedent sent by George Washington to sort of just return back home and return to being a citizen.
Yeah, that's the only time it was broken, with the FDR, because of times of war, it was somewhat justified.
Well, speaking of presidents and Donald Trump, last part of this, why don't you make a prediction? He's up for re-election. Is he going to win?
I don't see him losing. I'd be pretty surprised if he does. I don't think that there's a Democratic candidate out there that could beat him, and I think it's going to be similar results, if not even more closer to a landslide victory, because we already know Illinois, New York, and California are going to vote for whoever Democrat it is, just blindly vote Democrat for their hatred towards Trump. But I think the majority of the country will vote for Trump.
All right, you heard it here first. Well, thank you very much, Mark, and hopefully we hear from you again in some other endeavor. I have no idea what you have planned for the world, or the world has planned for you, but I'm sure it's going to be exciting and surprising.
Definitely.
All right, thanks a lot.
No problem.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody.
Hello everyone, my name is Mark Szuszkiewicz and I am officially announcing my candidacy for a state assembly in the 46th Assembly District in South Brooklyn, New York. This district includes all of Coney Island, where I was born, parts of Brighton Beach, Dyker Heights, and Bay Ridge, where I've lived most of my life. Back in April, I proudly accepted the nominations of both the Republican and the Conservative Party, but I have a lot of nonpartisan ideas that I think most people will agree with. An example is making some changes to these ridiculous overdraft fees that these banks charge, taking advantage of their customers. I also have a lot of interesting ideas on how to improve our education system, including an after-school program that I know the kids will enjoy. The top priority, though, is regrowing the economy after COVID-19, and I have some ideas on rebuilding the economy and funding programs like affordable housing without having to give these huge tax abatements to developers, or without having to increase fines and taxes on the citizens of New York State, which we've seen far too often. Now, I don't trust politicians to do the right thing. I trust myself to do the right thing, and that's why I decided to run for office. Unlike these politicians that constantly complain about problems and don't exactly explain how they plan on fixing them, I go into detail on all these ideas and more on my website, mark4ny.com. Aside from more details about the ideas, you can find out more details about me. I've worked numerous blue-collar and white-collar professions over the years. I've been a financial advisor, a real estate agent, a cross-country truck driver, an award-winning cable TV show host, and I've also helped with a lot of charities over the years. Details about that and more are on the website, mark4ny.com. Now, if you live in the 46th Assembly District, I would really appreciate it if you vote for me on Election Day, November 3rd. But even if you don't, these ideas that I have are going to help a lot more people than just the people in my district. You can help out by going to markforny.com, donating to the campaign, volunteering, or just help spread the word on social media. Now, I may wear glasses, but I have a 2020 vision for a better New York, and I hope that you help me make that vision a reality come Election Day, November 3rd. Thank you, everyone.
Tremendous show, tremendous success.